Well, here we are with two individuals that need absolutely no introduction. Byron Lazaroff Puck and Wolfgang Puck. How you guys doing today?
Amazing, especially since you are here in the afternoon, so we can hang out at Spago. I mean, we don't do that often enough.
Hanging out at Spago?
Exactly. Are you good?
I am fantastic. I have a bottle of water. I'm at a table with two amazing individuals. So I have an icebreaker question for all our guests.
Yeah.
I promise it's nothing crazy. Let's start with you, Byron. What did you have for lunch today?
Oh my God, I had a pork banh mi sandwich and a side of French fries.
That's a hell of a lunch.
There's a great cafe like right across the street called Zinc on Melrose, and they make a phenomenal pork banh mi. So you asked me on the right day, because half the times I'm like walking and eating. But today I got about 30 minutes to sit down.
That's chef life for you, and that's a great tip for our listeners as well. How about you, Wolfgang?
Oh my God, I ate so much. I don't know if can tell you.
Well, we have an hour.
So I didn't eat. I started in the office eating chocolate. Then I came here to Spago, cut a piece of bread, put butter on it, a little salt and some cucumbers. And then I ended up with my favorite. I had marzipan ice cream. I had pistachio ice cream. I had strawberry sorbet. And I think that's the beginning.
Dude, so, you had a tasting menu for lunch.
Yeah.
Man.
You hit all the major food groups.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ice cream being the top of the pyramid, always.
The important one, yeah.
Of course.
I saved the best for last.
Yes, of course. Well, you already alluded to it, but could you tell our listeners, since most of them are listening in the audio format, where we are sitting today?
Well, we're sitting here right in the garden at Spago, which is everybody's favorite place. And I think being in Southern California, there's nothing better than sitting outside, enjoying a meal, enjoying a cocktail, enjoying hanging out with friends.
Yeah, well said, Chef, well said. Well, I think everybody listening knows about Spago, knows about sort of its legendary status, but I think not everybody realizes just how pioneering it's been in a lot of ways. For example, you all pioneered the open kitchen, having raw tuna on a non-Japanese menu. Which one of these kinds of innovations are you sort of most proud of when you think back?
Well, I think I'm very proud, first of our longevity.
Yeah.
We are open 42 years already. I mean, how many restaurants are open 42 years? Like, I know 95% of the restaurants who were open, like in the 80s, they're gone. They're upscale restaurants. The coffee shops or the fast food, they stay around. So I think, to me, when I opened Spago, the first one up on Sunset Boulevard, we had an open kitchen. At that time, there was no white tablecloth restaurant where the kitchen was in the middle of the dining room. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was great because I could see all the beautiful women, all the movie stars coming in, all of our guests coming in. So it was perfect. And on top of it, everybody in the kitchen had to behave. So there was nobody who could really shout or curse or whatever they do, like in the kitchen at that time, especially the language was really foul and, everybody said the F word and everybody said, I used to say merde in French, it means shit, but I think it was great. And the people were like spectators. People loved to see us cook, the fire flaming up, and, we had an open a grill with wood fire. We had a wood-burning oven where we made our pizzas in it. And I built that because at that time, there was no pizza in LA except from, the pizza chains, but not any good ones. So I said, I want to make a good pizza like we had in south of France. But then I said, I cannot make it like in south of France or in Italy, in southern Italy with the tomato sauce and everything. I will make my pizza no tomato sauce.
Yeah.
And people loved it. And I thought it creates a whole new thing, a whole new category and everything. And the most important thing, I think, for Spago was I went to the farmer's market. I went to the farm, to the Chino Ranch down in Rancho Santa Fe. I went to the fish market where the Japanese chefs used to go. Mm-hmm. So we had the best ingredients, always fresh. And I remember Johnny Carson coming up to me and says, Wolfgang, I never had strawberries like you have. I said, well, if you go to the farmer's market or go to the farm with me down in Rancho Santa Fe, you can get some too. So.
Yeah, people probably weren't going to the farmer's market back then, but now it's like every chef has to do that, basically.
Every chef has to do it, and you have farmers market all over all over town here in LA.
Yeah.
Every town, if you go to Texas or to Oklahoma, you find farmers markets. So I think it's really great. But California is the best place because we have the best climate. So.
Yeah.
If you're in Kansas, there's no farmers market in the wintertime. They maybe sell canned pineapples and a few other things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll have to check out the farmers market in Kansas City someday. Byron, I wanted to ask you, because as you know, we were talking before we started recording, but this restaurant is older than you are.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, what is your earliest memory of Spago?
That's a great question. I mean, I've been so fortunate to grow up, and Spago feels like my home. And I always think of it as my home because my earliest memories walking through here are with my father and my mother, and watching my dad work the kitchen line or work the dining room and speak to all of the amazing guests that are here with us every evening. Those were forever ingrained in my mind and kind of fostered this passion that I have now for food and beverage and restaurants in general into the future. And so for me, if my dad used to drag me back into the kitchen, so to speak, as a young kid, I remember hiding often, right? Like in the corners of the kitchen as much as I could or under tables, but was always in awe and amazement of everything that was going on as well. Now, as a kid, I know, much to my dad's dismay, I was like a very plain eater, to say the least. So I was the most excited about the changes that he made to those pizzas when we first started off, because all I wanted was just a plain cheese pizza as a kid. And so that's forever ingrained in my mind, and my love for pizza in general, coming from the style that my father created in this very space. I mean, it lives on 42 years later, and it's still one of my favorite things to eat.
Yeah, and so Byron is the reason you added cheese pizza to the menu?
But I put truffles on it. Yeah. Cheese pizza with truffles. So I think it was so funny. Byron used to come with his friend to eat, and the friend ordered the smoked salmon pizza with caviar, and he ordered the plain cheese pizza. So I said it should be the other way around, but no.
Yeah, observers would be like, well, I know which one is Wolfgang's kid, but
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
And I also understand that you had some of your earliest professional experiences in Spago as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a blessing to be able to work in this kitchen, first and foremost. The immense amount of human capital that existed back then and to this day, the amount that you can learn here because of the fusion nature of our cuisine is immense. So starting here as a 12-year-old in this kitchen really stemmed from nothing more than developing a work ethic from my father and understanding, what life looks like in that regard. It wasn't about making sure that I ended up in this industry by any means, and was never really pressured into do so as well. But I always look back so fondly on those moments of being a 12-year-old and washing dishes in this kitchen, because that's how I started. Because some of those seminal moments for me growing up were our chefs on the line pulling me aside and telling me, hey, come and check this out. And whether it was our pastry chef at the time, Sherry Yard, teaching me how to make watermelon sorbet, or our kitchen manager, Chef Hugo Bolanos, would pull me aside and teach me how to make beet Napoleon. At that time, I just wanted to paint. I was like in love with art, in love with painters. I was obsessed with Van Gogh at that age in particular. And that was my dream. And I realized very quickly when I brought art home from school, nothing ever went up on the fridge. So I was like, all right, maybe this isn't my pathing, moving forward. And really quickly, when those chefs started pulling me aside, I noticed that anything really in this life can be a canvas if you choose it to be so.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I realized that, you could paint on plates if you worked in a restaurant. And that creative kind of juice just furthered me into this industry at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And those are just some of my fondest memories growing up, or being so well taken care of by people that wanted to take a little bit of time out of their day to show a young kid something cool.
That's cool. To a lot of people, they might hear, 12 years old in the kitchen. That's really young. But you yourself, chef, started at a really young age too, right?
Totally. My mother was a chef also. And so every summer I used to go visit her in the hotel where she used to work. And when I was 14, I quit school and I started to full-time cook as an apprentice about 50 miles away. I moved out of my house and everything, and then started cooking, and ever since. But when I was that young, I wasn't really passionate. You know, we are 14 years old. In the winter in Austria, what we do, we play ice hockey or we go skiing. So when I saw on Sunday the kids with their skis on their back going to the gondola, I said, oh no, I want to go skiing too. Yeah, I wasn't very happy cooking. But then when I went to France, when I was 17, I worked in a restaurant called Beaumanière, and that really changed my life. The owner there was amazing. It was a 3-star restaurant. His name was Raymond Tullier. And I think without him, I probably wouldn't be where I am today.
And so the kitchens that you worked in France, the Michelin kitchens, they were pretty different from the kitchens you ended up operating, right?
Oh, totally. The kitchens in the old time, in Austria too, was no Michelin star, but the chef used to get drunk, used to scream, used to hit people and everything. I mean, it was crazy. And then in France, they used to yell too, or throw things, throw a pen at you if something wasn't right. You know, you had to duck fast. It was almost a dangerous environment, you know. Now, thank God that has changed now. You know, we have to treat people the way we want to treat it. Be treated. The same thing is with the guests. You know, we have to treat them the way we want to be treated. So I changed that, and with the open kitchen, it had to change anyway. Yeah. And I think it was a good way to really change the whole philosophy. And at that time, you know, people just ordered online and or not online, but on the telephone, and somebody brought you the big zucchinis or the carrots or tomatoes, which were somewhere in the refrigerator. But to go and get things directly from the farm, that was something totally new. Now, for me, it wasn't new. I grew up on a farm in Austria, so we only got what we got from a farm. You know, if tomatoes were maybe for 2 months in the summer. Radishes the same, or strawberries maybe for 1 month. And we went up in the forest and picked blueberries and raspberries. And so we had everything fresh all the time. You know, in the wintertime, we ate a lot of rice, and my mother made a lot of different kind of noodles. So.
And I also understand it went as far as your family brewing their own beer. Is that right?
Well, I think we actually did a brewery at one point, like around 89. But, you know, beer was always the main thing. You know, in Austria, where I grew up, there was no wine. So beer was every little town, every little village made beer.
Yeah. No, I'm actually fascinated by the story of Eureka, the brewery you opened. So if we have time later, we can discuss. If not, I'll direct folks to a great podcast. But
I got a bottle of beer from Eureka upstairs right now. It's from 1992.
No way. You didn't pasteurize that beer, right?
No, we didn't. You're exactly right. That awesome.
Was one of the problems for it too.
Yeah, exactly. So I have it upstairs. I'll definitely bring it down at the end because I think it's super worth it and just such a cool kind of talking point and piece of history.
Yeah.
But please don't drink it, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Just don't drink it.
Unpasteurized Eureka beer from 1992.
It's only 22 years old.
I don't know. I think don't bring it down when I'm here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I hear you.
Not a good memory for me. It's like bringing my stepfather back.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Well, look, you heard about your father's experience, Byron, in the kitchen. You heard about people throwing pans. Obviously, the kitchen at Spago was a little bit different for you growing up, but still, not every kitchen is the one that your dad runs. So there were still some rough kitchens out there. What inspired you to be like, okay, I like making food as art on these canvases, but I actually want to do this as a profession?
So there were a few kitchens that I started working at when I was 18 and 19, and I had moved out of town. I was starting school at that point. I was starting university, and I got a really amazing opportunity to work for 3 chefs over the course of 3 years. The first being Eric Repair at Le Bernardin, and I still maintain to this day, nobody cooks fish like Eric Repair. And that was just that restaurant is an absolute institution in New York City, but his detailed-oriented nature and technique in terms of how he cooks. The 3 weeks that I spent with Justo, his butcher, downstairs learning how to butcher fish, were some of the most amazing times of my life because it very quickly taught me the amount of care and passion that he takes in every single plate that goes out into that dining room. What kind of furthered it on for me were 2 restaurants in particular, the first being Alinea by Grant Achatz. I, at that age, really had no knowledge or notion of molecular gastronomy in particular. And growing up mainly in my father's kitchens, this was a completely newfangled approach in technique and culinary creation I had never seen before. So it felt like a wake-up call, walking into Chicago, walking into his kitchen and learning a style of food that was completely unbeknownst to me. I mean, It was such an exceptional experience.
I bet.
And in that moment, I knew that was a path that I wanted to take. So the very next year, I applied for a stagiaire position at El Celler de Can Roca in the northeast of Spain, in Girona. And the Roca brothers, Joan, the head chef, Jordi, the pastry chef, and Josep, the sommelier, are three of the most just beautiful people you will ever meet in your life. So humble, so kind, so willing to teach. And I fell in love, it felt like, all over again with this industry. Because like my father was alluding to with Raymond Toulier at Beaumanière, I felt like I had found some really seminal mentors in my life that could teach me and guide me in their ways. And it felt really cool at the time, to be honest, too, because it was a style of cuisine that felt very disparate from what we were doing, what my father was doing at the time. And I felt it was amazing just to learn something brand new and something that was incredibly cutting edge.
Yeah.
So for me, that kind of reignited that passion at that age for me, where I realized how much true breadth there was in this industry, right? Not in terms of just genre of cuisine and the diversity of it all, but in terms of its technique and how people were utilizing other facets of science and technology and imbued that into their cuisine. I mean, it just expounded my mind and blew my mind, frankly, too. And so I started trying to apply to as many of those kitchens as possible and really work up my skill set to learn as much as I could at those places as well.
Yeah. And so Wolfgang, when Byron is at all these places and he's knocking on your door and being like, hey, Dad, I want to go to this place and this place, what was your reaction when you saw him like fully diving in to this career?
I think I was very exciting because that's really a dream of any father, of any mother, you know, if you are doing a business, to continue it and not sell it off and then the business goes away or somebody else taking care. To me, it's like taking care of your child, you know. I mean, we founded Spago and to make it run, to make it do so well for so many years. And then for me now thinking, oh, it's going to survive another generation or maybe another generation after that. I don't know if he doesn't have a recipe to make children yet, but I will pass it along too. So, but
definitely not yet. If you're wondering though, the only recipe he does have for children are boys.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear. He's got 4 of them, and there's no way to make a girl in this family for whatever it's worth.
Nobody's perfect.
Exactly.
That's right. That's right.
But I think it is really when we started Spago, and then we started Chinois a year and a half later. Chinois is now open 41 years, actually.
Wow.
Exactly in September in '83 we opened. And that was the first fusion restaurant, again with an open kitchen. And I thought, I'm not going to make Chinese food the traditional way. I'm going to make it my way. And I think it became this huge success. And, you know, to stay around for over 40 years is really an amazing thing to me. So, but these were really 2 restaurants which were groundbreaking. First of all, you know, the open kitchen concept was totally new.
Yeah.
And then fusion cuisine was totally new. So I think it was really 2 restaurants which set the standard of restaurants in America, where today or 30 years ago, every restaurant had to have an open kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't exist anymore. So sometimes I tell young chefs, you know where that started? And they said, no idea. I said, all.
Chef, what do you think when you see all these like crazy new fusion concepts come up? Like, for example, you know, this restaurant in Echo Park just closed called Poltergeist, and they were making these like yellow curry bucatini and stuff. And do you look at that and think like, hey, you know, we played a part in all that?
Well, I think creation and creating something, it's great, you know. But sometimes creativity has gone to a point where it doesn't make sense. You know what is great? If you create something and then 5 years later, 10 years later, people still ask for it.
Yeah.
I left Ma Maison 45 years ago. I remember I was in Maui And one of our good customers who I know for many years, he said, Wolfgang, can you make me the chicken with the mustard sauce you used to make at Ma Maison? I said, Jesus Christ, this is so long ago. Him too, his girlfriend didn't even know what Ma Maison was. So,
You're not wrong.
yeah, so I think that's really when a creation becomes a classic, then you know it's really great.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the difference. Just to throw some ingredients together to be different, yes, people say, wow, that's interesting. But interesting is not enough. It has to be delicious. You have to have a craving for it. You have to think at home, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I said, I can't wait to go back to Chinois or to Spago or whatever restaurant to taste that again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think when it comes to that too, right, it's all about guest reception. Our whole goal is making sure that you come in and you have a wonderful experience with us enjoying our cuisine. And a lot of the best creations, you know it, based on the clientele that you have. Like the simple analogy, I have a younger brother that is so into music and he wants to be a producer. And I always tell him, I go, put your music out there and let the people decide.
Yeah.
Right? Because they will tell you what works. They will tell you what they enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And with the best creations, that's how you know. It's with that guest reception. And I think also to that point, a lot of the best creations really come out of and are birthed out of necessity.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like your salmon pizza is probably the best story of creation birthed via necessity. And the guest reception to that has kept it on the menu 42 years later
I know,
as well.
it's crazy that people are still actually eating it. But you know what, even for me, when I go away somewhere and then I come back, I said, you know, a great glass of champagne with the smoked salmon pizza with a little caviar on top, there's nothing better than that. You know, you say, okay, I know this is perfect, you know. And I think one of the reasons is, you know, it's still around after so many years and people still start with it and says, I'm going to have to try the smoked salmon pizza. And then they remember it. People sometimes, we are not here for 10 years. They already come in and say, we have to try the smoked salmon pizza.
Yeah.
So.
It's not even on our menu anymore.
Yeah.
It's off menu.
Yeah, it's like technically a secret menu item, so to speak.
Not
But
so secret.
Not at all. I mean,
an
every
open
table
secret,
that
yeah.
walks in here, I mean, they know immediately.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's probably the most ordered food item. When we look at the sales mix through and through every month, right? It's always going to be up at the top.
Which would make it one of the most ordered food items in all of Los Angeles, if not the world at that point.
Well, in upscale restaurants for sure. You know, we didn't sell 1 billion like some Marx does.
McDonald's
whatever.
does for sure.
Well, you know, slightly
Maybe we
different.
should put
quality.
out a sign.
Billions and
over,
billions
over
served.
1 million served.
Well, you know, I actually did this thing in 2021 where I traveled the city eating at 100 different pizzerias.
Yeah.
And as one of my last pizzerias, I visited Spago for the legendary pizza. You just can't tell the full story of Los Angeles pizza or American pizza, but for that matter, without having that pizza.
Yeah.
So.
And, you know, being creative, you have a blank canvas and being creative, like with the pizza, with the dough and cheese or no cheese or whatever, vegetables, meat or fish or shellfish, whatever, you can do really so many different things.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't have to be red tomato sauce and a little mozzarella and 2 basil leaves on it. You know, it can be really interesting where you say, wow, what a great flavor combination. But it has to make sense.
Yeah.
You know, some people, just to be different, they put so many different things on it, you don't know anymore what you eat. And that I not agree with.
Yeah.
You used to edit me. I remember I always used to have so much fun in college in particular. I would write menu items and dishes, and I would spec the whole thing out, and I'll never forget it. I handed him my menu book on a plane ride one time. And I was like 2 rows ahead of him. And so I turned
he
around.
sits in first class.
No,
and
we
sit in
were
coach.
both in coach. Don't you dare. And we were sitting back there, and I don't know, I can't remember where we were coming back from. I think we were on the little like puddle jumper plane from Ithaca to Detroit.
Yeah.
And I handed you my book that I was like so proud of, and I like turned around and he's got this like huge smile on his face. And I went over and he handed me the book back after he was done reading it, and really simply just goes, less is more. Yeah. Because I looked through and it made so much sense when I looked back through my recipes. I was like, I had like 32 different things going on a plate. You know, I was like 17, 18 at the time. And I just thought the more I could pack in and the more I could make sense makes this work. And this is a really creative idea. But in that moment, you know, that kind of old and maybe cliched saying of KISS, like keep it simple, stupid, right? I mean, that really, really, the ability to edit your own creative prowess, I mean, is one of the hardest things, I think, to learn.
Yeah, editing yourself.
And I was always very thankful for that very, like,
You know, how many times when I had chefs write menu or write up dishes or whatever, and I said they needed 3 lines to describe and 1 dish. I just crossed the whole menu out and wrote with a big Sharpie, keep it fucking simple.
Yeah.
That's the best advice of all.
Yeah.
Well, you actually bring up college, and I know that you went to Cornell Management School.
I did, yeah.
And I just wanted to know, you know, a lot of our listeners are in the industry or considering careers in the industry. There's a little bit of debate about like what's best, just going to work in a kitchen or going to school. What's your take on that?
It's two-sided in the sense that I think from a culinary perspective, I learned best being in the fire. Being behind the line, working with chefs. I never went to culinary school. I started at a young age just working with different chefs, working in different restaurants. And that taught me so much, not just from a creative standpoint, not just a culinary standpoint, ingredients, techniques, what have you in that regard. I learned how to be a cook on a line and how to operate a kitchen. And it was, and still are, my most amazing experiences are being behind that line. And, you know, being in the trenches with your team.
Yeah.
It is an amazing experience. Now, that being said, Cornell in specific, and I certainly recommend university to... We're in the middle of pre-shift over here at Spago right now. I just want to make that very clear to everybody.
It's not for Byron.
It is,
okay.
it is 100% not for me.
It was a great answer, though. To be fair,
Thank you. But no, I you know, to each their own at the end of the day, right? I highly recommend university and hospitality programs for anyone that does want to learn that side of the industry.
Yeah.
What I think it gave me at a very young age is the ability to kind of look at the industry from a more umbrella perspective, from a financial perspective, and really develop that acumen, and also look at it from a more strategic development standpoint as well.
Yeah.
And not just thinking about the here and now, because when you are behind the line in a kitchen, you really are thinking about the next dish going out, and that is your primary focus. And I think the classes that I took there in particular really allowed me to think about like the 1, 3, 5, and 10, right? 1 year out, 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out. And I think that's one of the amazing prowesses of my father as well, is to be able to think long term and to make decisions not just based on the here and now, but based on how he wants to innovate and grow and evolve his restaurants, himself, and his business overall. I think Cornell and having a great mentor like my father simultaneously really allowed me to, you know, have that mindset moving forward.
should we sing along? Or?
We should also sing. It's Laurent. I want to give him a really quick shout out.
Yeah.
Laurent Stanu has been at Spago Beverly Hills for 25 years.
Wow.
It is his 60th birthday today, and the whole team is singing him happy birthday back there.
Happy birthday, Laurent.
Happy birthday, Laurent.
You got to say it in French.
Bon anniversaire, Laurent.
It's official.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lolo.
Happy birthday, Laurent. Well, that's a family right there.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned longevity. You mentioned longevity over these many years. Los Angeles, over the years, since you got here in the 70s, right? You've seen it change quite a bit. You've seen palates change quite a bit. How would you characterize that change?
Again, when you look what restaurants were famous at that time, or where people used to go, if it was Jason, the Bistro Garden, where we are now here, used to be a restaurant called the Bistro Garden. And you had Le Dôme and L'Orangerie and Ma Maison, Le Restaurant. You had all these restaurants. We were really on the top. They are all closed.
Yeah.
Why? Because they stayed the same. They didn't change. There was no evolution. And I think one thing I always strive for is really there has to be tradition, but there has to be innovation. And if you mix both of them together, you know, you can make customers happy, because we have people who come here and want their smoked salmon pizza, or want their Wiener Schnitzel or whatever, or their Singapore-style fish. But at the end of the day, we also have to make new things. If not, people get bored,
Yeah.
you know. So it's really an important part, I think, of longevity, is to continue to innovate, to continue to refresh the restaurant, to change the decor maybe, and do new things all the time. And I know even here at Spago, we changed not a lot, but we redid it like 3 times already.
Yeah.
So it's really an important part for longevity. And I think, to me, that's really the most important part.
And what about the palates of your customers? Because I understand back in the day, they used to like things a little bit different.
Oh, totally. I still remember... the police is looking for me.
They don't like what you're about to say.
It's about time they caught up.
Yeah. I remember when I was at Ma Maison, I had a salad on the menu called salad niçoise, which was with canned tuna, with beans and potatoes and eggs and everything. So when I went to the fish market, I saw all this beautiful raw tuna, which was used for the Japanese restaurant. So I said, I'm going to use that for my niçoise salad. It's going to be a new niçoise salad. So I cut it in smaller pieces, and then like a sashimi style, and then just grilled it on one side like a little bit, and the other side was still raw. And then I had the salad, and I layered it like that. And I gave it to some of our good customers like Orson Welles. I said, you have to try my new niçoise salad. And then I asked him how it was. He said, oh, good. And then I looked, when the plate came back, there were some salad leaves underneath. He buried the tuna underneath the salad leaves because he said it wasn't cooked. I mean, it was like I undercooked fish.
Yeah.
You know, like we had great salmon from Columbia River. And salmon, when it's cooked well done, it's dry. So
Yeah.
I cooked it like medium. And customers called me out in the dining room and said, Wolfgang, the fish is not fucking cooked. Cook the fish the way it's supposed to be. I said, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. They said, listen, you have to cook it the way I like it. I said, well, you're right there. And I went and cooked it more. So people's palate has changed so much. In the old time, people took me out. They didn't order a bottle of wine. They ordered a whiskey sour. The other one ordered a Negroni or a Martini. And I think that was really what people drank. Today, every table has a bottle of wine also, but a lot of younger people also drink a lot of cocktails.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about cocktails because I know that's a passion of yours.
Very happy to.
It's birthday central.
It's a-
We got
Yeah,
a
party
party,
every day.
going on in here. It's every night. It's the exact same way every
Oh
night.
yeah.
If you have a birthday, come to Spago.
Yeah, that's the best advertisement. You see, they're really good at singing too. The voices are amazing. You know.
Well, it's not Pavarotti, but let's not get that far.
All right, not Pavarotti, but close.
Yeah.
Close. As your dad was describing, the LA you grew up in is very different from the LA that you arrived in. How did LA's like culinary landscape and everything it has to offer shape the chef you are today?
I think the best part of the Los Angeles culinary landscape is built from Los Angeles cultural diversity, more than anything. This is one of the most diverse metropolitan cities the world has to offer. And with that comes along these fusion restaurants in particular, and these different techniques and these different understandings of ingredients that are so worldly. The beautiful part that my father was alluding to earlier as well is we're in the right climate to grow almost anything.
Yeah.
And so we have some of the most amazing produce to us and some of the most amazing chefs from all over the world that bring their heritage and tradition with them to this market. I think has, within the past 20, 30, 40 years, has shifted Los Angeles so much into this realm of fusion, but also just immense understanding and an immense ability to kind of step outside of what we might think as the classic kind of American culinary landscape and really build something new and fresh from it. And you see it in a lot of places, New York, Miami, London. And it's one of the best things that I think I've seen over the course of my lifetime is seeing every type of cuisine come to Los Angeles with people that are bringing it and really perfecting it out here, but then learning from each other as well. And learning from the other restaurants and then bringing that into your own, right? And providing your own kind of inimitable twists on them is so much fun to see. And I think that's just what I've noticed in terms of a shift in the dining landscape of Los Angeles is just, it's birthed from the amazing diversity that the city has to offer.
I think Los Angeles does not get enough credit. People talk about the food scene in New York or in Chicago or San Francisco. Most of the new things come from LA. One of the reasons is we didn't have the tradition like they have in New York or in Washington or somewhere where, you know, it has to be French this way. Every French menu had the same, restaurant had the same menu. You walked in, you see a table with some salads, with some smoked salmon, some pâtés on it, that was that. And then they had the table with the desserts and everything. And we really changed. So when we opened Spago, for example, it was a total new experience for the guests. The same thing with Chinois. It was a total different experience. When Nobu opened Matsuhisa on La Cienega, it was a total different experience than a regular Japanese restaurant or a sushi bar. You know, all of a sudden you saw tiraditos on the menu. You said, that doesn't fit into the thing. But Nobu worked in Peru, so he got some influences from there too. Or when Nancy Silverton started La Brea Bakery, that was the first one really to bake good bread, and where it was amazing. And where we started, Nancy was our first pastry chef, and we couldn't get good bread at Spago. So what did I do? We worked with Nancy to make our own bread. And I still remember I sent it to Billy Wilder, to Linda Evans, to Barbara Streisand. They all wanted our bread.
Back when celebrities still ate bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that I've heard you talk about, Chef, is in terms of the change in Los Angeles is, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, is food media. I know that, you know, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s even, the newspaper, that was like one of the main sources of criticism that sort of could make or break a restaurant. And today the landscape is a little bit different. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's really sad in a way to say. I love newspapers, I love magazines, I love books and everything. But today, it has changed so much. In the old time, we were all so nervous when the food writer came from the LA Times or LA Magazine. You know, I said, oh my God. Now, I don't think anybody reads the LA Times except me. and the food section is so boring anyway, there's nothing to read. So I don't know. I don't know really what's going on with the food media. I think the newspapers, they really shifted to a way where they want to be inclusive, which is great, to have all the different neighborhoods. But you also have to promote what is really a restaurant. You know, you cannot give a restaurant 3 stars because it's a hole in the wall and they serve good tacos, you know. It's not really a 3-star restaurant. There has to be a different with that. And, you know, that's why at the end, the Guide Michelin will be there forever. Why? Because you know when you go to a 3-star or 2-star restaurant or 1-star, you know what you're going to get about. You know what service you're going to get. You know you're going to have a great wine list maybe, or great cocktails or whatever. So it's a whole package, not just 2 good dishes. And there's a place for everything. But I think you cannot mix everything in one pot, you know.
Yeah, I get that. You need to have delineations and demarcations.
And I think now it looks like the newspapers especially, they have gotten to a point where they don't want to talk about upscale dining anymore. I don't know if they thought it's not the right thing to do sometimes, but you know, there are a lot of people out there who want to have an experience.
Yeah.
And we don't sell food or wine, we sell an experience. So we want people to come back. And you know, our gastronomy is an experience gastronomy. So with this setting, we invest so much money to build the restaurant, to get all the accoutrements, to get all the plates and everything. Everything is super expensive. And I think the people who appreciate it, they will go to a restaurant all the time.
Yeah. I've heard you talk too about, to that end, is like, okay, well, that's who is reading the LA Times, who is reading these newspapers, but a lot of people are looking at social media.
Totally.
And so you place a lot of value on that, don't you?
Totally. It's totally. Byron more than me.
Yeah.
Because I'm the only one who doesn't use a computer.
Yeah.
Don't send him an email.
Okay.
Yeah.
If
Good to know.
you're looking for a response, you're not
makes-
going to get it.
Makes sense why you're not responding to my emails.
Because I really said, you know, a long time ago, I did a dinner at Ted Turner's house. And I don't know how we can, in Atlanta, he founded CNN.
Yeah.
And we talked, and then Jane Fonda, I knew Jane Fonda actually from here, he was married to her at that time. And I don't know how we can come to talk about computers. And Ted says, I don't use a computer. I have somebody using the computer. I said, now I don't feel guilty anymore. I don't use one either. And he became pretty successful. So I said, if you have something you should, and you specialize in it, like being innovative, doing this, yes, you can create a lot of different things. But I think really specializing, if you're creative in a kitchen, you don't want to sit somewhere in an office and be on a computer all day. And I think I wasn't brought up that way. And I think obviously children today are brought up with their computer, but they have everything on their phone. Every kid today on the plane, they have a computer and watch movies or an iPhone or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost too much now, but that's just my opinion.
No, I used to just stare in silence on the plane. That's the way to do it.
Well, people are getting back to that again. I don't know if you've been on social media, but all of this raw dogging of flights all of a sudden is the most wild thing I can imagine.
What's old is new again.
Yeah.
The point that you were making, though, in terms of how the media industry surrounding restaurants in particular is changing, I found very interesting, especially through the advent of social media more than anything. I mean, it's a completely different landscape. To my dad's point, right? People, and you do read the newspaper every morning.
Every morning,
But-
yeah.
Wow.
But
Even the food section?
Not the LA Times, but I read the New York Times
you
food
are
section.
just doubling down on LA Times.
Hey, no, we do it all the time. We literally make
Yeah.
so much fun of every newspaper on this podcast.
I love the New York Times, but my favorite one is the Financial Times.
Okay, yeah.
On Saturday, I get 5 newspapers.
Wow.
What young person get 5 newspapers? Not many.
I don't think the young person can name 5 newspapers. Yeah.
Well, most of them are going away anyway. They're digging their own grave in a way, because the way they're reporting is obviously they have to make money. If not, they're not going to stay alive for a long time. And you hear each time the newspapers who don't get into the computer business, where they don't go online. Generally, they won't be around in 10 years or 20 years for sure.
Yeah.
I
So
think-
I was going to ask you, how do you because for example, I've heard your dad talk in the past, he likes to hear what's going on social media, but he hears it through you. So how do you keep tabs on things, and what importance do you place on what the social media sort of trends and, conversation is pointing to?
I think it's incredibly important in terms of the experience that we're trying to build, right? When you look at how restaurants, and especially how they were reviewed previously through newspapers and still through Guide Michelin, what have you, right? The biggest proponent of building a restaurant's client base has always been asking your friend, or word of mouth, right? And the new word of mouth style of marketing is truly on social media.
Yeah.
People look at these trusted individuals that you find on TikTok and Instagram and beyond, right? And they're making those decisions based on their visits to restaurants and what they might have to say based off of that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting newfangled format of how I think of it very simply is just word of mouth marketing again.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of trusted individuals that exist on those platforms, right? And people that I look out for as well. And I think the one place where I kind of stop on social media is making sure that there is such a massive, plethora of food media in particular as well. The thing that I try to stop at is utilizing that to get creative juices in the kitchen flowing. I think that's for me personally, at least, where I start drawing the line. Because I like to be influenced by being at another restaurant, or more so in the moment with chefs, and collaborating to create those ideas rather than, reinventing something that I saw a picture of online.
Yeah. That's also, I think, how you just don't become one of those restaurants that's just doing the trends, right?
Yeah.
Sure, exactly.
I think we want to set the trends. We don't want to just follow the trends, but it's so amazing today when you see, like, you have people come from Japan or from Thailand or wherever, the younger people, they look on the thing. I see them looking, and I said, "Oh, looks like our smoked salmon pizza here on their picture." And they point on it and said, "Okay, we want that, or we want that," because they hear it's popular or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think this has become such a big tool, and we know I mean, if we take everybody's iPhone away, it seems like the world's going to stop.
Oh my God. I'm getting
I mean,
anxiety
one
just
we
thinking
could
about
take it away would be
Yeah.
Donald Trump, would be a good thing, but some people really need it.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Well said. Well, look, we've talked about food. We've talked about LA. Obviously, I have a father-son duo here today, so I want to talk a little bit about family, okay?
Yeah.
So, Chef, you know, for you, I understand you had your first kid in 1989, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
And so you'd already been a very successful restaurateur at that point, but it was your first time having a child, and I understand you didn't have the easiest childhood. So I'm interested to know, how did you take your experience growing up and use that to inform your parenting style, especially having to balance such a crazy lifestyle as such a successful chef?
Yeah, it is very difficult, but for me it was easy. I said, you know, if I do the opposite of what my stepfather did, I will be a good father, you know, because he was the worst. And thank God my mother was an angel and he was like a terrorist. So I think obviously in our business it's very difficult because our business is at night. We don't go home at 5 in the afternoon and say, okay, now I'm at home. So we work at night, sometimes until midnight.
Yeah.
I remember Cameron, my oldest son, used to wait in the bedroom with his mother, and he used to watch David Letterman at 1 in the morning. He was like 4 years old or something like that. So it was amazing to see that. And then I still talked to him or went downstairs and said, okay, let's eat some cereals. And he liked it. So I think parenting has changed a lot, obviously. But I think at the end, family is really the most important thing. When you really look down and say, yes, the restaurants are great. You're passionate about what you do. You love to have people come every night. And I feel like I'm having a party every night and people are paying for it, not like when I invite them at home. So I think I love that too. So there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time in the old time, we didn't have a balance. I remember when I opened Spago, I was so worried of failure that I basically worked every night. I remember the first time I took a day off. It was maybe 4 months into opening the restaurant. And finally, my wife then said, aren't you going to take a day off? Is that the restaurant business you work every day? I just looked at it and I said, shit, I didn't take a day off yet. so it is hard. It is especially hard for women.
Yeah.
You know, because generally the women take care of the babies. Generally, the women are more important at home. The men, we are not trained to it. If the men would take care of the babies, a lot of them would have really bad accidents, I think so, because the men would forget about them. And I think it's really difficult for a woman who's really successful when she turns 30. They said, wow, you know, I want to have children maybe. I want to get married maybe.
Yeah.
And then if you get a child, all of a sudden, who's going to take care of it? You know, you don't want to give it to a nanny. Even if you do really well and never see the kid, it's not the right way either. So I think it's still a double standard for women, except for my older son, Cameron. He takes care of my grandson, his son, and the wife makes the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out Cameron, because he is the most epic father of all time. I mean, my nephew Max is like the most beautiful baby ever, but Cameron, my older brother, I look up to him so much because I see him now with a 1.5-year-old child.
Yeah.
And he is the most doting, loving father. You know, it's truly unbelievable to see.
That's
so
amazing.
I give him immense credit.
Yeah, no, it's so amazing. And he loves to cook for him and for the little guy, for Maxwell. I remember we were on Zoom, and he's 1.5 years old, and he was Cameron was making him some long fettuccine with pesto. And pesto is a pretty strong flavor.
For
and
a
the
child,
little kid was eating the fettuccine. I mean, she had it from his mouth all the way to the floor, full of pasta. And he was gobbling up his pasta. So it was really amazing to see. Not only he actually is a great father, but he actually knows what is good for him, what is good for him too, what is good for the child and what is good for him, and to give him grown-up food. You know, if you start giving them, vegetables when they're young, they know they're gonna like vegetables.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden you have a kid and they never had vegetables and you never eat vegetables, I think the important part is, if you all sit down together, have a family meal, everybody eats vegetables. You're not going to order hamburgers and French fries for the kid.
Of course. You got to lead by example.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it there, but like making sure that your kid has the tools to do stuff, right? I mean, I can imagine if you have a son who is in the same profession as you may have the temptation to really micromanage or helicopter parent. How do you sort of like strike that balance between wanting to help your son, but also like letting him be his own person?
Well, I think first of all, I think Byron had a very good education. He worked in some of the best restaurants in the world.
Yeah.
In the kitchen always. He went to probably the best hotel or restaurant management school in the world.
Yeah.
So his foundation is amazing. He is very smart also, and he's passionate. And I think the passion really makes you work harder, makes you not count the hours, and not only passionate about cooking or whatever, but also about the guests and the staff. The employees who work with us is our biggest investment, is our capital. So the most important part are the people we work with, because they can make or break a meal so fast and so easy, and people will never come back.
It's true. It's true. And your passion is palpable, by the way.
Thank you.
When we were just talking about like, cocktails and whatnot and the cocktail
I think
pairing
it's
menu.
cocktail time already.
I think so.
Cocktail,
You want a Negroni or what? Let's get it going.
I'm absolutely ready. We're almost done here, but on the flip side of that question, I would assume that you are really like, I asked your dad like, where is Byron? He's like, he's everywhere. He's not just here. He's at Mirage.
I'll try.
All over the place. But I would assume that with your dad's everything that he's accomplished, that there are a lot of expectations and pressure on your shoulders. How do you go about navigating that?
It's a great question. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, and as cliched as this might sound, it is truly the truth. But pressure builds diamonds.
Yeah.
And for me, I am the luckiest and most fortunate kid in the world to have the education that I have, most importantly, to have the mentor and father that I have. To your earlier point, he's never micromanaged me a day in my life. I think his ability to let me develop my passion on my own while watching him and seeing him work and seeing what it takes to be truly successful in this industry is one of his greatest skill sets, frankly, because it's allowed me to fall in love over and over and over again in my own way with this industry. And that's one of the most beautiful things. And he always pushes me to learn more. Yeah. I think one of the best things about my dad is he's a great listener. And so I can talk for like an hour and he'll just sit there intrigued by what I have to say, and vice versa at the end of the day. But I love it because he's always pushed me, if I've gotten interested in something, to just go and do it.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky to have that, in our own restaurants. And I've cooked for years, but I wanted to get more focused on the business side, or I've wanted to really develop my knowledge and passion for wine or beverage. And he really allowed me the opportunity to chase those dreams as they came about and really focus into them to develop, I guess, a more rounded sense of this industry too. Mm-hmm. And that's been just the biggest blessing of my life, is to be able to really learn it from that umbrella perspective, as he was able to do over time. So for me, I'm just thankful that I have the mentor that I have. And I've been, really given the opportunity to develop the passion on my own. Yeah. Because with that, it's just truly undying. Yeah. Every morning that I wake up, and like my dad was saying, like, why take a day off? Why take a day off when you just go in loving exactly what you do? This is my fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My girlfriend is probably going to kill me for saying that on a podcast right now. But like, it's a blessing to love what you do. And I'm so thankful to be in that position. But, it's the old adage of, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And that's what it feels like right now. And I'm just going to keep playing that chord until I can.
Yeah, totally. When people ask me always, when you're going to retire, why you don't sell, why you don't stop working, why you don't start going to the restaurant at night, I said, that's what I love to do. Nobody forces me to do it. I love what I do, and hopefully I do it until the end. I always said, if I die in the restaurant, hopefully it's at the end of the service, because that way everybody can go home happy before.
Oh my God, that's
That's
awesome.
like really
Where do you-
selfless too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like make sure everybody gets fed first.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So
so
I think that's really true, and I think with Byron talking about not micromanaging, I think I saw so many restaurant owners who could not let loose a little bit and let their kids who work with them make mistakes. Making a mistake, there's nothing wrong. We are not doing brain surgery, you know, but if somebody drips a little wine on a tablecloth, you don't have to go down on them and says, oh my God, you know, you ruined this customer's experience. The customer might not even know.
Oh my God. We
Right on cue.
Oh my God, look at
Unreal.
We're
that.
going to be able to do a cheers at the end of this. This
Yeah.
is amazing. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Negronis just
you.
hit the table, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Beautiful.
much.
Yeah, so I think it's really good. You learn from mistakes. And I remember when Byron opened his first restaurant, Miroir, up on Sunset, and he called me, Dad, what should I do? What should I do? I said, you figure it out. And I hung up. And then later on, he said, you know, I couldn't sleep at night because I was so worried for failure or whatever, you know. And but I think at the end of the day, you always figure it out what to do, you know. And I think that's really good. And like I said before, I have my friend like Sirio, who owned Le Cirque in New York, and the most famous restaurant. His kids went to Cornell also.
Yeah.
And but they could not change a water glass if the father didn't approve it.
Yeah.
And I said, what difference does it make if you get one a little yellow, a little blue, or a little gray? You know, the experience will be the same. But they couldn't do nothing. They could not change a dish on the menu. They couldn't change 2 wines on the wine list or 2 cocktails on the cocktail list. So he was so micromanaging the whole business that sooner or later the business went away.
Yeah.
By the time the kids could have gotten it, there was no more business.
Yeah.
And now the kids are like handicapped because they cannot think on their own.
Yeah.
I like people who can think on their own and bring something to the pie, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's really an important part, you know, to have your opinion. And obviously also the more important thing is to listen.
Yeah.
You know, you might learn something if you listen. If you talk, like I do now, you know everything already. You know what you say. But I think listening is very important.
Yeah.
Listening to everybody, to the guests, to the employees. You know, I listen to the bus boys just like I listen to the bartender or to the valet parking guy.
Yeah.
Why? Because if a customer is not happy, he might not tell it to me, but he might tell the parking attendant and says, you know, I'm not coming back here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, you know, we have a problem. So it's really important to listen what's going on.
Yeah, that's great advice for anybody in any field.
Yeah.
Okay, the Negronis are at the table. You've been very generous with your time, so I got a final question for each of you. Obviously, Spago and all of your restaurants have had an incredible run over the last 40 plus years, 50 plus restaurants all over the world, but there's still a long ways to go, you know?
You're right.
This journey's just getting started.
Yep.
What is your vision for the future? Maybe I'll start with Byron and then move over.
Oh man, I'll say it because I love what we do true in terms of hospitality in restaurants and being able to captivate a guest for 2 to 3 hours and build an unequivocal experience is amazing. I think for me and my goal moving forward is not just to maintain or sustain my father's legacy that he's built over the past 40 years, but to grow that and further that as much as I can physically muster. For me, a pipe dream of mine that I'll just be very honest with you about is that I've spent time working in hotels and I would really love to be able to have the opportunity to transition our brands into a full-fledged hospitality experience.
Wow.
Where it doesn't just end at the end of your dining experience. It starts when you check in with us.
Yeah.
To where you lay your head down at night to rest, to the wellness amenities that we provide to you, to the 5-star dinner that you get at the end of the evening, and with a beautiful checkout where you can go home and on your merry way.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to take what we've done so expertly and expound it into a realm where the hospitality doesn't end because we're with you the entirety of your stay.
Wolfgang Puck Hotels. You heard it here first,
I
everybody.
know. I need a place to sleep after work. It might be so much easier if I take the elevator upstairs and have the room right there. Don't need a house anymore,
Yeah.
especially since the kids leave anyway, so
Yeah.
it would be perfect.
That's quite the vision there. How
Yeah.
about yourself?
Myself, I'm going to continue. Obviously, we were talking about the hotel projects for a long time already. I mean, it would be very exciting to have something similar to the Amman resorts or things like that, something really upscale and really where you really get an experience, if it's the food, if it's the sleep, if it's the gardens around and everything, like you see a lot of these inns in Europe, or where I worked like Beaumanière. That would be like a perfect thing, have like 40 rooms and serve the best breakfast and get the best ingredients. So that would be a great dream. But I hope I'm going to continue restaurants also. So I think I'm going to be around for a long time because I just signed a 50-year lease with a 25-year option. So I'm going to be here for a long time.
You know where to find him, folks.
Yeah.
You know where to find him. Well, hey,
So Byron is not happy about that. So when you're going to get away from me?
Oh, please. Absolutely not. One of the coolest ones, honestly. And that will certainly come to fruition, and we couldn't be more excited about that fact.
lots to look
Awesome.
forward to. There's never a dull moment with any of these properties. I just want to say a big thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure
now
is
we
ours.
can get a
Please.
cheers.
There we go.
Cheers.
Thank you for having us. Cheers.
To the next 50 years at
To-
least.
to
Maybe
the-
There we go.
Maybe the 25 you can do them alone.
Cheers.